Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
I'd just come off a brutal 3-day shift. Hot rigs, busted tools, 10 hours of sleep in 3 nights. I should have gone straight home, crashed face down with a fan blowing in my face. Instead, I found myself driving the 40 minutes out to my mom's trailer without even thinking. No call, no heads up. Just turned off the highway and let the road take me there. Her front door was unlocked, which wasn't unusual, but something about the silence inside hit me wrong. It wasn't just quiet, it was hollow. No TV, no music, no clink of her glass mug she always filled with Lipton and vodka. Just that stale stillness that told me something had already happened. She was in the kitchen, hands sunk in a sink full of suds, scrubbing like she didn't notice me walk in. But I noticed her, the fresh bruise on her cheek, purple just starting to bloom. Her knuckles were red, skin split across one, like she'd hit something, or someone. "Mom," I said, low but firm. She didn't look up. "Don't worry about me," she said. Same damn line she's used my whole life. I stepped closer, jaw clenched, fists curled at my sides. "Who was it?" She just shook her head and rinsed a plate, like I was 5 again, asking things that weren't my business. Quick note, before we go deeper, tell us where you're watching from, city, state, or country. Drop it in the comments. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number, just a link. I opened it. My dad, laughing wide on a speedboat, one hand wrapped around a bottle of champagne, the other around some woman half his age in a red bikini. Caption read, "Living my best life." I stared at the screen like it might change if I blinked long enough. That same smirk I'd seen my whole childhood, like the world owed him something, and he'd come to collect. I walked straight to the guest room, the one with the half-broken ceiling fan and my old baseball posters still curling off the walls. I bent down, pulled back the rug, opened the old gun safe I'd stashed under the floorboards last time I was here. Inside was a manila folder, thick with papers. One envelope on top, marked with my lawyer's name, Mason Green. I didn't say goodbye, didn't ask if she was okay again. I just got back in my truck and pulled away, folder on the passenger seat, heart in my throat. On the drive, I called Mason. "Torch it all," I said. There was a pause. Then his voice. "You sure?" I stared straight ahead, eyes locked on the highway. I've never been more sure. Mason didn't say anything after that. Just told me he'd start the clock and hung up. I drove the rest of the way with the window cracked, letting the wind drown out everything I didn't want to hear. Somewhere around the county line, the old sounds crept in again. See, I grew up learning to read a trailer like other kids learned to read faces. The sound of soft music playing meant Mom had a rare good day at work. Clinks of glass meant she was calming down or gearing up. Silence meant I better keep my head down and my voice low, because silence in that place never meant peace. Dad didn't allow peace. He was a welding foreman, ran job sites like a dictator, and brought that same damn attitude home. Loud, sharp commands, criticism for sport. He'd sit in his recliner like a king, barking orders at us like we were his crew. Nothing was ever clean enough, fast enough, respectful enough. Mom worked nights cleaning offices in town, barely made minimum wage, but she never complained. She'd come home late, shoulders slumped, hands raw. Sometimes there was a limp, sometimes a fresh bruise on her arm or collarbone. I'd ask and she'd say, "I slipped," or "That cabinet sticks." Always some excuse, always her fault. I knew better, but I was just a kid. At 16, I got a job at Red's Diner just off Route 9. Wore a red apron and refilled more coffee than I care to remember. I loved it, though. Loved having my own money, my own space, my own voice, even if it just said, "hash browns or home fries." Dad hated it. Said, "We don't need people seeing us beg for tips like trash." Told me I was embarrassing the family, that a woman's place was in the house, not slinging pancakes to truckers. When I applied to the State Inspection Academy at 18, he laughed right in my face. I remember it so clearly. Him cracking a beer at the kitchen table, pointing the bottle at me like it was a weapon. "You, walking pipelines? Don't make me laugh," he said. "You'll break your damn ankle and come crawling back asking for help." So I joined anyway. 4 months of hell. Safety drills, equipment testing, fraud detection, incident reporting, and walking miles of pipe in the blistering sun. But I didn't quit. Didn't crawl back. My first year in the field, I saw everything. Leaks, pressure drops, sabotage. But what hit me hardest was in a workers' camp near Odessa. I was checking valve signatures when I heard shouting behind a prefab trailer. I walked up just in time to see a man gripping a woman's wrist so tight her skin turned white. She saw me and froze. He let go and barked something about just talking. She nodded like it was her job to protect him. I knew that look. I knew that silence. She had a fading bruise under her eye. Said it was allergies. He said she tripped. I filed a full report. By the book. Chain of custody, photos, timestamp, witness notes, all of it. The company didn't follow up. Just shuffled the guy to a different site and told me I was too green to understand site politics. But that wasn't the point. The point was, I'd seen it, recognized it, and this time, I did something. That moment stayed with me longer than any inspection log. I realized I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was watching, collecting, building. Just like I had in my own house growing up, but now with purpose, with power. This job taught me to see the cracks and document them before they collapsed into something worse. And deep down, I started laying a foundation for something bigger. I just didn't know it yet. I wasn't waiting for someone to give me permission anymore. I was preparing for war. It started quiet. Just a line in a maintenance report I was cross-checking during a routine audit 2 years back. The paperwork was sloppy, signatures missing, pipe specs didn't match the field logs. But what caught my eye was the contractor, Northfield Resources. I knew that name, not from the field, but from the past. It was one of the dummy companies my dad had bragged about starting back when I was in high school, said it was for tax purposes, but even then, I remember thinking it sounded off. I didn't say anything out loud. I just flagged the document, printed a copy, and slid it into a file folder I kept under my truck seat. No name on it, no labels, just the start of something I couldn't fully explain yet. After that, I paid closer attention. Didn't go looking, just watched what landed on my desk, what got passed around in contractor briefings, what paperwork accidentally showed up late. Every time I saw something that smelled like bullshit, I printed a copy. I found overcharges on parts that never arrived, signatures from people who didn't exist, invoices sent to shell companies with addresses that traced back to nothing but mailboxes and strip malls. I started matching the names tied to accounts I remembered from my dad's old business cards, workers listed on payroll who weren't even certified, a safety officer I'd once seen get handed an envelope after a late-night inspection. Bit by bit, it started forming a shape, and that shape looked a hell of a lot like my father's shadow. I didn't know exactly what I was building back then. I just knew I didn't want to be caught empty-handed if the day ever came. So I built it slow, deliberate, like stacking firewood before the storm. Mason never questioned me. Every couple of months, I'd drop off copies, notes, evidence with names circled in red. He'd lock it in his filing cabinet, raise an eyebrow, and say the same thing. We'll wait till the box is big enough to drop over his head. Then came the woman in red. She showed up first in a background report we ran on a flagged vendor connected to one of the shell companies, Elise Thomas. Blonde, bright smile, professionally edited photos in heels and a red blazer. Real estate agent, also happened to be the same woman from that boat photo, the one clinging to my dad like a trophy. Digging into her business opened the next layer. She'd been closing deals on properties that didn't match the zoning records. Lots flipped through LLCs owned by offshore accounts I'd seen once in a tax audit. Accounts tied to my dad's old construction company. It wasn't just shady, it was layered. Clean on the surface, rotten underneath. She'd file a deed under one name, flip it to another, then unload it to a third, usually a shell, and pocket the difference. The payments always traced back to one of Dad's firms. That's when Mason sat me down, shut the office door, and opened the master folder. Okay, he said, flipping through the tabs, his fingers stained from printer ink. We've got fraud, theft, perjury, tax evasion, public endangerment. And now, real estate laundering. I sat across from him, arms crossed, jaw tight. He looked me dead in the eye. This isn't just a file anymore. This is a weapon. He was right. I hadn't built a case. I'd built a loaded gun. And it was aimed squarely at my father's empire. Mason slid the folder across the table, nodded once, and picked up his phone. That was all it took. By the end of the day, motions were filed to freeze my dad's assets. Subpoenas went out to every bank, vendor, and shell company tied to his name. Mason even called in a favor and got a protective order request expedited for my mom. I didn't go home. I drove straight back to the trailer. The sun had just dipped behind the trees, and the porch light buzzed like it always did. Inside, Mom was folding laundry on the couch, like it was any other night. Towels, shirts, socks, all stacked with neat little corners, like order could keep the chaos out. I dropped the manila envelope on the table in front of her. "It's a protective order," I said. She glanced at it, then back at me. "For what?" "For you. To keep him from showing up, from calling, from even standing within 100 feet. She blinked. "He hasn't been here since—" I cut her off. "It doesn't matter. He will. Once the subpoena's hit, he'll come looking. And I'm not letting him touch you again." She didn't speak, just kept folding a dish towel, slower now. I walked over, grabbed it from her hands, set it down. "You need to sign it, Mom." "I don't know," she said, voice trailing. "Won't this just make things worse?" I crouched down in front of her, met her eyes. "Worse for who? Him?" She looked past me, to some spot on the wall. "He'll get angry," I snapped. "He's already angry." "He's always angry. That order is the only thing we have that gives us leverage right now. It's not a threat. It's a boundary." She stayed quiet, fingers twitching like they wanted to reach for something. Laundry, a drink, anything but that pen. "Mom," I said, quieter now. "He's not coming here with words. He's coming with lawyers and threats and money. You need this paper between you and him." She finally looked down, reached for the pen like it weighed 100 pounds. Her hand shook as she signed her name. I didn't say thank you. I didn't hug her. I just watched her do it. Watched her cross that line, just barely, into something new. I left the trailer without turning back. Mason's office was dark when I pulled in, but his car was out front. I walked in without knocking. He was at his desk, sleeves rolled up, tie loose, flipping through a stack of emails. He looked up. "She sign it?" "Yeah." He leaned back, cracked his neck. "Good. That'll keep her off his radar while we dig." Then he dropped the real news. "Elise gets served in the morning." That got my attention. "You sure she won't tip him off?" He smirked. "Once she sees her name tied to a dozen fraud charges, she'll be too busy saving herself to warn anyone." I let out a breath. Mason folded his arms. "Once Elise is served, he'll know this isn't just family drama." He tapped the folder beside him. "It's a takedown." And for the first time in my life, I felt like we were the ones kicking the damn door down. By the next morning, my phone wouldn't shut up. First, it was just calls. No voicemails. Just his name flashing across my screen. Dad, again and again, like he thought if he rang long enough, I'd forget everything he'd done and pick up like it was Sunday dinner. Then came the texts. "You've made a mistake. You don't understand the fallout. This won't end how you think." Threats pretending to be concerned, like he was still the one in control. I didn't answer, not once. An hour later, Mason forwarded me the email. Elise's brokerage had been flagged for audit by state investigators. Her name was on the top of the report, tied to 3 shady closings and a shell buyer in the Cayman Islands. That same afternoon, she posted a photo of herself on Instagram in full makeup and pearls, sitting behind a desk like a politician's wife. The caption? "Some women threaten weak men. Subtle as a damn sledgehammer." I didn't engage. Let her post. Let them both twist. But I knew it was only a matter of time before the blowback hit my job. 2 days later, I got called into my boss's office. He was sitting behind his desk, thick file in front of him, that look on his face like he already had a headache. He didn't waste time. "Your father filed a complaint. Says you're using your role with the state to carry out a personal vendetta. Wants you investigated for misconduct." I kept my voice even. I've followed every reporting protocol, never touched an active case with his name on it. Everything's backed up. He sighed. "I believe you, but you need to keep your paper trail airtight. No gray areas, no shortcuts. You make even one wrong move, he'll bury you in red tape." I nodded once. "I already am." He didn't say anything else, just waved me out with a look that said, "Don't make me regret trusting you." By the time I got back to my desk, the first blog post had dropped. Headline, "Daughter Turns Against Powerful Pipeline Magnate. Family Feud or Fraud Expose." It was full of half-truths and speculation, sprinkled with screenshots from Elise's social media and blurry photos of my dad in court. They painted me like some unstable whistleblower with a personal grudge. The comments were split. Some people called me brave, others called me bitter. But one comment stopped me cold. It was from a retired safety inspector named Jim Carter. Said he'd worked sites with my dad back in the 90s. His comment was short, buried deep in the thread. "I saw what this man buried. Literally, You're not wrong, kid. I stared at those words like they were lit on fire. Then I printed the whole thing, folded it, and slid it into the folder with everything else. Every piece mattered now. Every little crack in his shell added up. He thought he could rattle me, thought he could shame me into silence or drown me in noise. But I wasn't 12 anymore, hiding behind the couch while he yelled. This time, I had the file, I had the names, and I had nothing left to lose. The printout was still warm in my hand when Mason called. You need to get down here, he said. Now. Guy named Stan Vickers just walked in. Says he used to work with your dad back in the early days. He brought a lot. I was at his office in under 30 minutes. Stan was already seated in the conference room, hunched over a cup of bad coffee. He looked late 60s, maybe early 70s. Sun-battered skin, stiff hands, jeans that hadn't fit right in years. There was a beat-up manila envelope in front of him, and he kept one hand on it like he was afraid we'd try to take it before he was ready. Mason leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Stan, this is her. Stan didn't smile. He just looked me up and down, nodded once. I should have come sooner, he said, voice rough like gravel. But I got tired of waking up sweating through my damn sheets. I sat across from him. You worked with my dad? He shook his head slowly. For him. Back when he was running things out of that barn off exit 12. Before the offshore money, before the women, before the lawyers. It was just him, a truck, and 3 of us patching bad pipe with worse welds. He opened the envelope and slid the contents toward us. Photos, grainy ones, old enough to be from a disposable camera. Stacks of rusty pipe, makeshift scaffoldings, crews working with no safety gear, invoices handwritten in faded pen, showing supply orders that didn't match the delivery logs. A folded-up note on lined paper. Names, dates, dollar amounts. Cash, Stan said. He paid safety inspectors to look the other way. Especially when we had a big client breathing down our neck. Sometimes they'd sign off without even showing up. Mason flipped through a few more pages. What about incidents? Accidents? Stan looked straight at me. We had a guy fall from a lift, cracked 2 ribs, fractured his pelvis. Boss told us to clean it up and never speak of it again. Didn't report it. Told the guy he'd get a bonus if he kept quiet. I leaned forward. You were there? Stan nodded. I held the guy's damn leg together with duct tape till we got him to a clinic 3 towns over. No paperwork, no report. Never happened far as the company's concerned. Why now? I asked. Why come forward? His eyes dropped. Your mom. She didn't deserve that life. None of you did. I should have said something back then. But I was scared, and broke, and drunk half the time. Mason cleared his throat. What you've given us shifts the game. This isn't just fraud anymore. This is criminal negligence, endangerment. You've just opened the DA's front door. Stan stood up slowly, back stiff like a man carrying decades of weight. I'm not looking for credit. I just want it to be over. He walked out without shaking hands. Mason turned to me, holding the note like it was burning a hole through his palm. They can't ignore this now. It's too big, too real. I stared at the pile on the table. Old photos, greasy paper, names no one thought would ever resurface. I felt something shift inside me. He wasn't just my father anymore. He was a public threat. And I wasn't just his daughter. I was the damn whistleblower. Mason barely had time to scan the pages before the first emergency motion hit. Dad's lawyers came in swinging, filing to block the subpoenas, freeze the protective order, suppress Stan's testimony. Their whole strategy was simple. Stall, smear, drown us in paper. But Mason wasn't the stalling type. He pushed back that same day with a reply brief and Stan's entire packet attached. Photos, invoices, the duct tape story, every damn name on that handwritten list. But this time, he led with something new. Public endangerment. Not just fraud, not just bribery. This was about real lives, real injuries, real risks still buried under miles of bad welds and fake inspections. The court set a hearing for Monday, fast track. And just like that, it was real. Elise, of course, played her part too. Posted some moody black and white photo of herself sitting at a window, captioned, "Truth always finds its way." Even lies dressed as family drama, like she was starring in a movie instead of helping bury felony charges under beachfront property deals. I didn't even bother to respond. I had other priorities. Sunday night, I picked up groceries, pasta, sauce, eggs, cereal. Grabbed a cheap bouquet of tulips while I was at it, just because. Drove out to the trailer, same as always. Mom was in the kitchen stirring sauce, barefoot, humming something soft under her breath. I set the bags down on the counter and handed her the flowers. She gave a quiet, surprised laugh. "You trying to guilt me into eating vegetables?" "Nah," I said. "Just figured you deserved something pretty this week." She made spaghetti with garlic bread, same way she did when I was a kid. We didn't talk about court, not once. Just sat across from each other eating carbs like it was any regular Sunday. After dinner, I helped her rinse the dishes. She still used the same sponge she had a month ago, half disintegrated, stiff from too much soap. When everything was put away, I grabbed my keys and stood by the door. "I don't need you to come tomorrow," I said. "But if you want to, you'll have a seat." She nodded slowly, then looked at me and said, "You be careful in there." "I'm not the one they should worry about," I told her. I stepped outside. The porch light buzzed overhead. "Just one thing," I said, turning back. "I want to see you lock the door behind me." She didn't hesitate, walked up, twisted the deadbolt, then turned the knob to show it was shut. That click echoed in my chest, louder than all the calls, all the emails, all the noise of the last few weeks. It was the sound of her saying not this time. Monday hit like a fist. It rained hard, sideways sheets that soaked your socks before you hit the steps. The courthouse buzzed under flickering fluorescence and smelled like old paper and wet carpet. I spotted him right away. Front row, center, like it was his show. My dad, in a tailored navy suit, hair slicked back like some politician on a press tour. That smug little smirk stretched across his face like he thought we were just here to throw a tantrum, not drop the match. Elise sat beside him. No makeup, pale lips, sleek ponytail. She didn't look scared. She looked rehearsed. Mason didn't waste time. Once the judge took the bench, he stood up and opened with the protective order, laid out the timeline, showed the photos, my mom's face, her bruised cheek, the damage she never wanted documented. The courtroom went dead silent. Even the damn air paused. Then came the numbers. Mason walked the court through every spreadsheet, every cross-reference, every fake name on a payroll tied to my father's companies. Elise's signature popped up over and over again, closing sales, shuffling deeds, finalizing wire transfers to offshore accounts. She shifted in her seat once, crossed her legs the other way. That was it. Then it was Stan's turn. He stepped up to the stand in a worn-out denim jacket and boots still caked with mud. No nerves, no games. Just a tired man finally unloading. He told them about the fall, about the lift that collapsed, about duct taping a man together and driving him to a clinic with no records and no real name. He listed the payoffs, the envelopes of cash slid under clipboards, the names of safety inspectors who looked the other way, the dates, the jobs, the exact weld sites where corners got cut. Mason handed him the note, the one Stan had written all those years ago, listing every cover-up, and Stan confirmed every line with a steady nod. When he stepped down, the DA stood up. No speech, no build-up, just a quiet bomb. The district attorney's office is opening a parallel criminal investigation based on today's testimony and evidence. Effective immediately, the judge scribbled something, then looked up. Understood. Proceed. My mom was the last to take the stand. She wore jeans and a pressed white shirt. No jewelry, no makeup. Just clean and steady. Mason asked 2 questions. She answered them both without flinching. Then the judge asked if she had anything else to say. She looked straight at my father. Didn't cry. Didn't shake. "I stayed in his box for too long," she said, voice strong and clear. "My daughter built me another one. This one has a door that was the moment, right there." The judge granted the protective order, extended it statewide. Then he closed the folder in front of him and said, "All evidence and testimony in this hearing is referred for criminal review." Just like that, the room shifted. My dad wasn't smirking anymore. His mouth was tight, eyes hard, like someone finally put glass around a man who thought he was fire. By the end of that week, Dad's legal team was in full panic mode. They started flinging mud everywhere, op-eds in local papers, blog posts hinting at me being mentally unstable, accusations that Mason was coaching witnesses for personal gain. They even dug up an old car accident I had when I was 19 and tried to spin it as a pattern of reckless behavior. Didn't work, because for every article they pushed, more people came forward. Quiet voices, steady ones. A woman from Houston emailed Mason about the time my dad threatened to fire her husband if he didn't sign off on a falsified drill log. An older welder sent in pay stubs showing overtime that was never paid, 5 years' worth. Even a city clerk from Amarillo dropped a file of zoning approvals that Elise had greased through with gifts and dinner meetings. Elise, of course, pivoted like a pro. She gave a sit-down interview with some lifestyle reporter, all soft lighting and sympathetic nods. Wore beige, no jewelry, said she was blinded by love and deeply manipulated by a man with power. Didn't drop his name, but she didn't have to. Mason watched the whole interview on mute, then pulled up the paperwork from one of her most recent deals. Here, he said, tapping a highlighted line. Buyer name doesn't match the account the funds were wired from. If she was that manipulated, she was still sharp enough to run her own cut. He filed for full disclosure the next morning. That's when things started cracking fast. The DA followed up with formal charges: wire fraud, bribery, payroll abuse, public endangerment. They listed the violations like a grocery list. Dad blinked, called their bluff, then blinked again when they didn't flinch. A week later, he took the plea. No prison, but full forfeiture of assets tied to the companies named in the case. Financial oversight for 10 years. Couldn't hold a business license in the state of Texas ever again. Elise flipped, cooperated in full, handed over her documents, emails, phone logs. In exchange, they knocked her charges down to misdemeanor tax fraud and fined her into the ground. Court day came. One more time, we stood in that cold-ass room with bad lighting and worse chairs. This time, though, it was just paperwork, agreements, signatures. Mom stood up when the judge asked if she had anything to say. She cleared her throat, voice calm but strong. "I'm not here for revenge," she said. "I'm here to make sure it stops." That was it. That was the whole damn statement. And it rang louder than anything anyone else said that day. After the press was already swarming outside, cameras, mics, even some guy live streaming from his phone. We didn't stop, didn't wave, didn't answer one question. We just got in Mason's truck and drove straight to the bank. Mom sat across from the teller, hands steady as she signed her name on 3 new accounts. Savings, checking, one for the fund Mason and I were working on. She read every line, didn't rush, didn't ask me to do it for her. She owned it. Back at her trailer, I walked her to the door. "You good?" I asked. She nodded. "I will be." Then she locked it behind her. No hesitation, no looking back, just click. And that sound, same one from the week before, hit even louder this time. Because now it wasn't just protection, it was power. Spring came late that year, but it came all the same. Mom found a little house near the coast, just 2 bedrooms, white shutters, and a front yard taken over by weeds. The place looked forgotten, but the light inside poured in like it had been waiting for someone to show up. We dug up the garden our first weekend. The soil was dry and packed, but underneath it held. We planted tomatoes, basil, marigolds around the edge to keep the bugs away. She wore old gloves and a bandana tied at the back of her head. Looked younger than she had in years. While we were laying out rows, I told her something Morales said to me once, back when I was still new on the rig inspections. Fear and tomatoes can't live in the same house. She sat back on her heels, brushed a smear of dirt off her chin, and smiled. "Let's test it." A few days later, Mason called, said we had leftover restitution money that wasn't claimed, smaller payouts that no one stepped up to take. He had an idea. What if we used it for something better? We called it the Begin Again Fund. First check went to a woman 1 town over. Her ex had threatened to come back. We paid for a lock change and a 1-way bus ticket to her sister's place in Kansas. No press, no noise. Just help. That week, a letter came, postmarked from Austin. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was from Dad. Blame, excuses, paragraphs of why it wasn't as bad as we made it seem. He ended it with, "I hope someday you'll understand." I folded the letter and stuck it in the back of a drawer. Didn't burn it, didn't respond, just left it there to rot. Then I went back to work. Same badge, new cases. I checked valves, interviewed welders, answered calls with steadier hands than I ever had before. At Mom's, the tomatoes started to come in. The plants climbed up the stakes we tied with twine, stubborn and strong. We picked the first one late in the afternoon. Big and red and warm from the sun. We sliced it in half and ate it over the kitchen sink, juice running down our wrists. It tasted like a new page. That night, she turned on the porch light. Didn't say why, didn't need to. It just stayed on. Soft, steady. For anyone who needed to find the door.